Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books of Genghis Khan, and today I have for you my April reading wrap-up, coming to you on time for the first time in a few months. Man, I've been so busy, but I have been having one of the greatest reading months in my life yet again. This has just been an era of great books for the last long while. But this month was no different, and I go into this not even having chosen my book of the month, because it's not clear. There's two that are neck and neck. I'm going to have to make a spur-of-the-moment decision, just based on how I feel at the end of this video. But there's two that are basically tied. So two basically new all-time favorite books for me, and a new Adrian Tchaikovsky release, and a reread of a treasured series. So let's dive in to what I was doing. And I finished up my reread of Empire of Silence. So I had started this more than a month ago, leading up to my interview with Christopher Rocchio that I did on the channel. So leading up to that, I wanted for the world and the characters to feel fresh. And so I started re-listening to Empire of Silence leading up to that. And then I just slowly kind of worked through that over the course of this past month. And it was a joy to go back into Hadrian's teenage years and to relive those early days of his life, and so much really important foundational setup for what's to come later is happening here. And so I was able to pick up on a lot. I wasn't the first time, but it was just really great being back in some of these sequences that are really emotional. And man, there's one in particular that the second time around really brought me to tears, basically. Just a really incredible coming-of-age saga that plays out through this book. And I can see why a lot of people don't immediately love the series. This is a very slow, deliberately paced setup book. And this is not what the rest of the books feel like. So if you're iffy on continuing the series after this, please give Howling Dark a try. But I just am so connected to Hadrian, the storyteller here, our only POV protagonist, that even though it's slow and it really speaks to my soul, and I still can't believe that Rocky was able to write this as a teenager, and I think he was essentially a writing prodigy, and definitely an old soul, because this book is so full of wisdom, and I think the series has just become more and more full of that as it's gone along, and Rocky has lived a little longer and had some more life experiences, but man, what an achievement as a book one to one of my favorite series. So loved the re-listen on this with the amazing Samuel Rukin narrating, just one of my favorite comfort listens. Next is something I did not plan to read at all. In fact, I tried this out earlier in the year and DNF'd after chapter 1, and that is Shogun by James Clavell. This historical fiction epic from the mid-1970s. And so I knew the show was coming out, the new version, and so I gave the book a try. I have this really handsome edition here that I think is no longer available, unfortunately. But I gave chapter 1 a try, and I just didn't get into it. It's taking place on this ship, and there's a storm, and I just didn't love this very first chapter that takes place on the ship, and that's all that I gave it a go before, a few months ago. But I started the show, and 4 episodes in, I was like, I love this story, and the setting, and the character dynamics, everything about it. I was blown away by the new show. And so I was like, you know what? I don't just want to go ahead and watch the show and spoil the book, because I think the book might also be a very special experience, and so I'll give the book a go and see if I want to do that before finishing the show. And I started this one again after chapter 1, when Blackthorn wakes up in Japan on land, and it was like a different book completely for me. I was so engrossed in this story from that point on till the end. It's 1,300 pages in this edition. I mean, this is a chunky boy, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. It was so immersive in Japan around the year 1600, in this feudal era, and maybe it's because this takes place in a real historical place, and it's dealing with kind of real human cultures that have clashed and developed over time, but there was just a certain weight to all of the theming around culture and the clash of cultures, and meeting new cultural norms and learning them, or just being confused by an other. And it just, this book exploring that, it had so much weight to it in a way that a lot of fantasy books taking place on secondary worlds just, they don't have, with the cultural theming, with, you know, just cultures and cultural practices and norms and settings that are invented by authors. They're usually interesting and creative, but they don't bring that really, really emotional, heavy kind of seriousness, I think, to that particular theming around understanding a new culture and the importance of cultural norms and being open to learning others. And I think this book just explored that brilliantly, just spectacularly, the best I've ever seen, and really, and not too dissimilar from a lot of the theming or the experience I had reading Song for Our Bone by Guy Gavriel Kay. So just another one that was kind of based on a real place, southern France. So maybe there is something to basing stories on real places that can really add to it. I have myself been a fish out of water. I, after college, went abroad and did some volunteer teaching in the Pacific and also in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, for 2 years. And so I've kind of lived a version of this, and I've been in a lot of these kinds of very awkward cultural situations where I just don't understand kind of the politeness norms or what's expected of me, definitely the language of what's being thrown around, and trying to pick up words here and there. So there was a lot that I could relate to in this story. And just, though the specific place of Japan, the cultural kind of norms there that the characters take so seriously, the bushido, the code, the way that people go about their daily life and are so honor bound, it was just so immersive and engrossing, and really just learning about a different way of life, and that's been one of the really valuable aspects of my own travels around the world, is learning new kind of belief systems and cultural norms and different worldviews. And you could have that while reading as well, by staying home and just being transported by an epic like this. While the show is amazing and gripping, this is a richer, deeper experience. A lot of the scenes that take place are just really drawn out. We're not rushing from scene to scene. In such a big book, there aren't that many different scenes and sequences, as many as you might expect for a book this size, but we really follow just second to second the POV characters' thoughts and what's happening, and then in the middle of a scene we'll switch POVs to someone else who's there. If we're in Blackthorn's POV in a scene, we'll usually then switch over to someone else that's there, or multiple people, and they'll both be thinking about how they don't understand what's going on culturally with Blackthorn or with the various Japanese characters. And that is so fascinating. I love all of the POV switching. This is not an omniscient narrated book. It's very much just a third-person limited POV structure, where we're always in one of the characters' heads who's in the scene, but it's just very liberal about switching and giving you lots of POVs of minor characters that maybe we don't even see later, and definitely switching among a lot of the major players and main and side characters. So I love that approach here, and just it had some really, really epic, memorable sequences. Usually not a ton of action, but this political situation gets built up that really was fully engrossing. I think I've seen people that are fans of that kind of political plotting for Song of Ice and Fire and for Song for Our Bone. A lot of this kind of really high-level, high-stakes political maneuvering is taking place in this book. That is really a pleasure to see play out, and in ways that were so unpredictable to me. So, man, what an engrossing book. It didn't really get me to the point of the level of feeling emotion, like it brought me to tears, that I was kind of getting that choked up while reading. So I don't think it's going to go towards the very top of my favorite books of all time, which have brought that level of emotion out of me. But this is definitely a new favorite, and can't wait to continue reading Clavel's Asian Saga. And if that wasn't enough to have a great reading month, I then dived into a possible new favorite book in the realm of the Elderlings for me. That is Fool's Assassin by Robin Hobb, book 1 in the finale trilogy. That's the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, and I loved this from start to finish. I really loved how she reset things in Fool's Errand. at the start of the Tawny Man trilogy, and I just got more of that here, and this was simmering with a little more tension from the beginning, though, and just the things that happened and the way it developed and the twists and turns and the setup for the rest of the trilogy was fantastic. I barely want to say anything about this because I was not spoiled on anything going in, and I don't want to even give any possible clues as to what happens here, because if you haven't read it, you could just take the journey and find out for yourself. This was a fun style for Hobb because it felt like she was trying out maybe a new, almost subgenre, like a 1800s British kind of gothic novel where a lot of it takes place at a large mansion, kind of country estate. And I've read a couple of those. I've seen some movies that have had that kind of setting, and it just worked like a charm for this book. And yeah, I barely want to say anything else. But other than that, I just loved this to pieces, and is my favorite book one, I think, of all the Realm the Otherling subseries, and definitely in competition for one of my favorite books. But I cannot wait to continue with this trilogy soon. Probably next month I'll dive into book 2. I then finished up this month with an Adrian Tchaikovsky new release. This is Alien Clay. It's a sci-fi standalone. So I got a broken binding edition of this, since a lot of Tchaikovsky's books recently have been coming out in the UK months before they've been released in the US. And so I grabbed this copy when it went on sale through the broken binding. Got a cool alternate cover. And this one, unfortunately, like, because it's a new release for the UK, I wasn't able to get an audiobook. That's not coming out on Audible for many more months. And I wish I had the audiobook to go along with this one, because it would have enhanced my experience. I ended up at 4 stars. This is a solid, fun, interesting Tchaikovsky book, but not one of my favorites from him. And it is a first-person kind of written in almost a satirical voice with a lot of sarcasm, a lot of British slang. It kind of reminded me of the style of the novella And Put Away Childish Things from last year. Now, we have a kind of similar cheeky kind of POV protagonist character. And Tchaikovsky's been in a very cheeky mood in these last couple of years, I think, and he's been letting his kind of sarcastic side fly a little bit. And so this is very voice-filled, which is why I think it would have worked great with a really good audio narrator. And so if you're in no rush to start this out, maybe give it a go on audio, because there's a lot of wordplay, there's a lot of really intentional kind of jokes that Tchaikovsky's throwing in here that I thought would have been just more fun for me on audio instead of racing through it in print alone. But this ended up being a solid read for me, especially in the second half. The first half, I just hadn't yet gotten gripped to it. But something happens in the around the halfway point where the plot takes a certain turn that things got a little more serious, and it just really had me engrossed from that point on. And there's some really cool theming going on around ecology and what it would be like to be exploring biological life on a non-Earth planet. So the premise for this book, which is not going to give away anything, you get it really close to the beginning, is that there are prisoners that are being sent off to a labor camp on a planet that we've discovered and kind of colonized, or at least set up a little base where we can do some exploring and research. And there's like a 1984 like Big Brother type of world government back on Earth. And that's not really a big focus. There's only a couple flashback scenes to Earth. But it seems like there's this Big Brother type government in control of everything called the Mandate. And dissidents are basically round up periodically and sent off to colony worlds and labor camps. And so our POV protagonist was an academic and is now a prisoner, and he's been sent to this planet. And there are all these work crews that are trying to go out and explore on this planet and figure out what the deal with these like archaeological ruins that look like they have some writing on them. But on this planet, there doesn't seem to be any really like sentient kind of life that would be creating those. So there's this mystery around that. But there's a lot of really interesting kind of plant and animal life that is very different from Earth life, and that's a real kind of highlight of this read. And Tchaikovsky kind of leans into exploring what a very different kind of ecology might look like. And since it comes from this biology academic background, you get a certain level of authenticity with that you just wouldn't from other authors. So this one, if you want one that's a little lighter, it also has this theme of kind of political revolution to it. It's split up into 3 parts based on the motto of the French Revolution. I think that was liberty, equality, fraternity. But it has this kind of very political satire element to it. But like I said, if you're not so into that less serious side, halfway through you get more of a serious kind of the kind of thing I was more expecting with this, like more something like Children of Time. But I have not read a lot of Tchaikovsky sci-fi standalones, and what he does so well with all of his different standalones and series is just being different stylistically, and the subjects, the plots all feel so different, and this one is no exception. This feels so different from everything Tchaikovsky has written that I've read so far, and just filled with creativity. And I don't think you'll be disappointed by reading this, but don't go into it thinking you'll get something similar to Children of Time. It has this more sarcastic, satirical side to it that really is carried through all the way. So a 4-star solid read for me there. All right, before getting to book of the month, what am I reading now and what will I read? Well, I have just started Disquiet Gods, and this has been one of my most anticipated reads of my life ever since I read Ashes of Man right when that came out. And I'm just at the start of this and already am loving the setup and where this is going. Man, I am just spoiled for all of these amazing reads that I have going on right now. And so I'm going to be doing that over the next week. And then if you missed my last video, which was Kyle and Jake having a competition to choose my TBR over the next couple months, the next bunch of books I'm reading will all be their choices. You can check out that last video, which is a lot of fun, seeing their picks for me. And so we'll see whose TBR ends up getting the most points from me and producing my favorite reads. So the first one, I think that will be a nice break from the heavier stuff I've been reading, is Shards of Honor by Lois McMaster Bujold. This book 1 of the Vorkosigan sci-fi saga. And then I think it'll be time to start The Dandelion Dynasty with the Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. I've been excited to try this for a very long time, and this is the kick I needed to finally do it. And after A Song for Our Bone was such a hit for me, I'm kind of pumped to get right back into Guy Gavriel Kay and The Lions of Al Rassan, which I've only heard amazing things about. So hopefully just more and more amazing reads to come. We'll see. I hope those end up going well. And then it ends up being a very close competition between Jake and Kyle. All right, so now is the time for the book of the month for April. And oh boy, I don't know. It's too hard. I don't think I can choose. Can I choose Shogun, Fool's Assassin? They're so different. Man alive. Oh boy, I can't. I just can't figure it out. They're both awesome books for me. So this is a shared book of the month. Fool's Assassin and Shogun. That's a cop-out, I know, but there's no real clear way to make this decision for me. So I loved both. We have a shared book of the month for April. Man, can I figure out which one? No, I can't. I just love both of them about the same. So that was my April. Let me know what you've been reading and loving or not loving over the last month. If you've read any of the ones that I read, let me know what you thought of them, and I'll catch you later.